Yes.
Hi, I'm Ashaya. My question is, considering that Casterly Rock is taller than every skyscraper built in the 20th century, does it happen to have like a series of cages and winches or little elevators or any way to transport things easily?
Well, Casterly Rock is loosely based on the Rock of Gibraltar. Have you ever visited the Rock of Gibraltar? Yeah. It's pretty amazing. Of course, Casterly Rock is bigger. In fantasy, you always turn everything up to 11. But it's not usually bigger, you know. So, go see the Rock of Gibraltar and all that. It's pretty amazing. There are caves down there. There are fortifications. I mean, there were gold mines, and in the Rock of Gibraltar, they tapped out eventually, but it's honeycombed with tunnels, and there are places where they stationed cannons to repel it, and there's a whole theater there, and no winches or elevators, but slanting tunnels and steps carved into the rocks itself, and all sorts of other kinds of cool things.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jacob. I think the beginning of Game of Thrones ends with all the characters, they all die in the prologue, and I was wondering, do you think that's a risky strategy to open a book that way, or what's the best way to hook your readers or grab your readers by opening the opening scenes?
Well, it worked pretty well, so it can't have been too risky. You
can't argue with success.
The result has been pretty good. There's no set answer to that. If there was one single way to open a book, everybody would be using it, and all books would open the same way. But you do have to hook your reader, and that's true, particularly for new writers. I mean, if you're trying to sell your short story, you're sending out to the magazines or the anthologies, it better have a strong opening and a strong first page, or the editor is going to reject it, read 2 pages, and then bounce it. You've got to get someone interested there. And that's true to some extent of novels as well, and of the readership when you finally get into bookshops and the stands. If people pick up your book and they're standing at a Barnes & Noble and they're looking through the stacks, and they pick up this book and that book and they look at the first page, and if they see something intriguing, maybe they'll buy the book and take it home, and if not, they won't. Now, when you get established, when you're in a position that I am, or any established author with a long track record, the readers will cut you a little more slack, because the thing that interests you is the name on the thing. Okay, it's a Stephen King book. I know what Stephen King delivers. Maybe the first page isn't great, but I know he's Stephen King. Sooner or later it'll get good. But if you're not Stephen King, and you don't have a name, you better make the beginning something powerful and interesting to get the reader into it, or the book is not going to be bought and it's not going to be read.
Hi, I'm Aziz. I have another backstory question. You have created a really diverse backstory that seems like it just merges with the main story so well that it kind of gets hard to keep track of which is which at some point, which is a good thing. I wanted to ask about the character Bittersteel. Daron II was a king who tried to bring peace to the realm, and it's said that he tried to keep the great bastards close, and we kind of have examples of what he did for Daemon and for Brynden Rivers, but we're not really sure what he did to keep Bittersteel close. Obviously it didn't work, but curious what he tried to do.
Well, I may explore all of this in future things, especially Blood and Fire, the history of Targaryen.
Looking forward to that.
Reign, but it'll be a while before I actually write that. One of the things I'm doing with these things is exploring the concept of what constitutes a good and bad king. And our viewpoint as modern 21st century people is, I think, different from what medieval people, or particularly medieval novels, medieval people would think. You look at a king like Edward II of England. He was the son of Edward I Longshanks, the Hammer of the Scots, the conqueror of Wales, who expanded the thing. But Edward II, he was a big, strapping guy, as big as his father, blonde, very handsome, strong, athletic, but he was not inclined to warfare, and he didn't like jousting or swordplay, which is not to say that he was bookish or sedentary. He liked wrestling. He liked working with his hands. He liked building things and carpentry and thatching roofs and all that. And he didn't like the lords of the realm, who he found arrogant and obnoxious. But he liked the common people. He liked to go out into the villages and associate with common people. He surrounded himself with commoners who were carpenters or stonemasons, and he was interested in their crafts and how they did their crafts. And we would look at a guy like that and say, hey, this is a pretty cool guy. But the history is he's despised. He's considered the worst king England ever has. Now, there's also a big case that he was gay, he was homosexual, which is probably part of it, you know, because many of his associates were young men, but he had two particular favorites, Piers Gaveston and so forth. But nonetheless, being warlike in the 21st century is not necessarily a good thing. But it was considered necessary for a king back then. And, you know, I'm looking at exploring some of these same kind of issues in Westeros. You know, King Daeron II, Daeron the Good, was not a warlike king. He was more of an intellectual, and he was interested in peaceful solutions to problems. He was interested in producing economic growth and the prosperity of his realm. But he was surrounded by these bastards, his father's other sons, who were much more formidable swordsmen and warriors and jousters, and who were interested in conquest and glory. And those are the things that people responded to in those days. So,
Thanks.
let's just hope that the present American electorate doesn't go all medieval in the next election. Because we can see some of these candidates trying to, you know, win votes by saying how many people they would carpet bomb or how tough they would be, you know. So.
I was wondering if you had read Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time series, and if so,
I read some of them. You know, he was writing those, and I discovered that I was forgetting a lot, so I stopped reading them and to wait until he finished. And of course, he unfortunately passed away before he finished. Brandon Sanderson is finished, but I haven't caught up with I think I've read about 4 of the books, and I'm about 8 behind.
did you read enough to have a favorite character in that series?
A favorite character? Well, he had the 3 main kids who were one, and I think I liked the one who was Perrin, I think was.
Okay.
Yeah, of the 3 main guys, the one I liked the most.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Rand did have 3 women, which was probably a good thing, I guess. For Rand, anyway. Not necessarily for the 3 women. Yes.
Hi, my name's Jerry. I'm a gamer by trade. And I was wondering, one of the things that you've done, you've had several video games come out, the Telltale series of Game of Thrones, the Game of Thrones Genesis, the strategy game. You've had tabletop role-playing games. You've had card games. What's it like from a technical or from the writer's perspective of creating for these kind of properties? How different is it? How alike is it? And how much do you enjoy it compared to just actually writing books?
Well, I don't actually get involved in creating the games. I recognize the synchronicity. You know, I'm a book writer, and it helps me to have these products out there. I know many people have come to read my books through the television show, but there's also a certain number who have come to me from the game. They've played the Fantasy Flight card game or board game, or they've played the Telltale game, or the Cyanide video game that preceded it, and they've gotten interested in the world and they've bought my books. But I have a hard enough time just getting the books done. I don't have time to start inventing the games too. So my role in the games is sometimes I have a role, particularly in selecting the art, because I'm fussy about wanting the best fantasy art, and so I name artists that I want to work with and all that. But I don't get involved in inventing any of the game rules or the scenarios. You know, as sometimes some of the game companies will have me involved as on the approval basis. They'll send me what they've come up with, and I can approve or disapprove or give notes. But for the most part, I let them handle that rather than get into it myself.
Do you still have a gaming group in New Mexico?
Yeah, we do, but it's not very active these days. A couple people moved away, and you know, I don't know, we just don't seem to play much anymore. The last game we really played regularly was the one that ultimately became the Expanse TV series.
Oh wow.
And Ty Frank was running that for us. And when he and Daniel decided they would make that a series of books and then a TV show, I stopped running the game, which was a pity because I was really enjoying that game.
My question is this: Hodor?
Hodor.